So the first thing we did is, we looked at tools that can visualize for us in a way that is processable, that we can process all the differences within the database. And so Jason wrote this script called the differinator. Just show this really quick so you can see what this is about. And it's here we go. It's a schema comparison tool. It's just a PHP script that lists every single table that exists in both databases and then uses information schema to retrieve information about each table.
Yeah, like one of our biggest challenges was, it's really hard to look at like a black text on widescreen or whatever tool you're using and really get what the data types within the database structure is. So we wanted something that we could quickly reference, we could quickly compare not only the data structure but also the actual data content within the database. And so I wrote this tool so we could pretty much pick out any table. This currently just shows the tables that are common in the Drupal 5 database and the Drupal 6 database. And in most of these, the Drupal 6 will be empty because our approach, Stefan and I, our approach we chose when we were going the second route without upgrading the site was to we were trying to keep a clean database and keep everything clean as we update it and then move the content in afterwards. So while our clean database will show that it's this is our filled database with content and our database that's filled with content after we've been working on it, and you'll see that now we can actually really take a look at what's going on in each column and compare the differences. So it's just a tool that we wrote because we really having a hard time really getting a good at-a-glance eye on the data, and so we just thought that this might be a helpful tool to have, and it did prove invaluable for a large part of the process.
So after we identified the differences, we went and we created some dummy data. We created in Drupal 6 some of the pages that already existed in the Drupal 5 page, and then we just went to the database, looked at where is the content stored, how does it compare, what's added, what's missing, and then went from there and came up with the migration process. And when you say migration process, we talked about this approach: whiteboard, a room, and some type of hand, and then we just started backing things out. So this is an example here where we first, on the left, you'll see here, the tables in the Drupal 5 database, and then how they relate to the Drupal 6 database. And then we went through each single one of those. This one is the panels pane table, and we'll show you mapping here, and just basically went through each single one of those columns and said, how do they match? How do they carry over? What needs to change? What needs to be? What did not exist, or the actual data has changed. So, for example, the access previously in the Drupal 5 set, I think there's just I don't even know how it was for, but I think if there was no value, it would just store null value. Now in Drupal 6, it stores this empty serialized PHP array instead as a default value. So this is how we went. This is basically how we went about it. And the ultimate goal was to have a SQL script auto-generated that we can just run, that will take the data and using replace into from a select, carry all the data over from one database into the other.
During this part of the process, we noticed that for probably 70 to 80% of the tables. While the size of the data type may have been longer or shorter, usually longer than 6, a lot of the data was direct, and it made it really simple to script 70% of everything. It was a real simple, just a SQL statement using the information schema of the database, and then, but it was for those other 20 to 30% of the tables that it became quite a nightmare. So Stefan and I, we developed a PHP script. I'll show it to you. Here. So this is basically the script, and we basically took each table and threw some flags in if we figured, oh, we can skip them and it can just be a direct import column for column if that worked. And then we started just putting them in some special arrays if they needed some custom scripting, and we broke them down. Like in an earlier point in this presentation, we mentioned how there's new modules for certain things. In one particular case, there's the bio module, which tells the information of each user, their like what they do, their department, and all that. And that's completely been thrown out in favor of either the native profile module or what people seem to prefer to use in the community, which is the staff profile, or the staff profile module.
I think that's what it's called.
Yeah, and then so there were these that needed some serious custom tweaking, and so like this is the build of our SQL statements down here. Much too much to go over in a 15-minute meeting, but if you guys ever want to email us or anything like that, we can definitely use pointers of what helped us, or maybe if you guys know anything, you can give us some pointers. But basically that PHP script, the goal of it was to basically create a series of SQL statements that would populate the data properly, pulling the data from the Drupal 5 site and putting it in the Drupal 6 database. And an example of, like, at the last time we ran this, I guess it was this morning or yesterday, this was the combined total SQL in file that we had that runs after we rsync everything up. And like, so there's a lot of stuff going on, as you can see, and some of them it's just a direct import export, but then some of them they're just nightmarish, turning stuff into serialized arrays and all this other stuff. So it was this is what it ends up. So when we do each time we run another iteration trying to get it to be correct, it creates this script on the fly and then runs it at the very end and populates the data. And it's really improved over the past month or so. And that's what happened in the very last step of that.
So as far as panels go, not only do we have to populate a different database, but there's also the API changes. A lot of the building blocks within panels have either changed or have been retired. For example, previously in Drupal 5 you were able to use your standard Drupal blocks and place them directly as panes within your panel page, and that's gone away. You have to use now content panes all the way. If you have blocks that are supposed to display shared content across multiple pages, you have to use a new feature called mini panels, and it's mini panels have their own content panes. It's like to refer to this as a turducken, where you basically you nest these building blocks within each other. And so we had to identify those replacements. We had to re-implement our blocks as content panes. We had to re-implement panels 1 custom-made content panes as CTools plugins. Views is another animal that looks different now. Previously, you were able to embed views directly within your panels, while you still have the functionality. The much more preferred way to go about it now is to create a content pane view display within your view, and then you start want to embed the view within your panel page. And so, since we have to rewrite all of our previous reviews anyway, there's luckily only about a dozen of them in the system. While we're at it, we created those content panes within reviews, and so that allowed us to place those on the page as well. And we were able to be specific about the panel panes, those building blocks of those panel pages. I would say we wrote 99% of those we were able to automate the data migration. As shown in the script previously, the sole section to that is the views. They had to be manually recreated and dumped out and latched onto the migration script as candy queries, because there was absolutely no way to somehow automate that. There was just the differences of the data that's stored in the database, the serialized PHP arrays, they were still too much. So that was, since there was only like a dozen or so of them, it was the right decision to choose the manual approach. But everything else, as far as we can tell so far, of our 300 plus pages, they're all coming nicely together. So right now we're working on theming everything, which is a challenge because the region names in Drupal 6 have changed, so that pours over into basically the CSS classes that are available for theming. So we need to basically go through our style sheets and adjust them accordingly. Jason is working on that.